Hey, how's it going? My name is Cynthia and I'm the owner of Digital Bloom IQ. And today I want to talk about how to make content that is SEO friendly. So I know a lot of you struggle when it comes to thinking about what Google wants, what Google doesn't want. And I wanted to walk you through my own process for creating SEO friendly content. I actually am currently working on a training and I'm gonna walk you through how I create the training and how I make it SEO friendly. So the first step is to create a space that is good for creativity and amazing content. So the first thing I do is I put my phone on silent, and actually I'm gonna take my phone into the other room. I have some tea, I have some water, I have my laptop for music, but I try and just block off any sort of Slack or any messenger. I have a notebook, I have some tarot cards, which I'll show you guys how to be using in a second, and I have a candle, which I think is also just great for ambiance. And I also make sure that any distractions like puppies are calm and hopefully won't make any noise. They look somewhat calm right now. So the first thing I do is sit down with my notebook and my pen and I write out my intention behind the content I'm creating. So in this case, I'm doing a free training and I'm just going to be writing out what I want people to learn from this training, my personal intention behind the training, and just really connect with what I want the impact of this training to be. You can do this for a blog post, you can do this for a podcast episode, for an opt-in, anything you're creating, even a training. Just sitting down and writing down your intention will change the vibe from the beginning. So you might be wondering, well, when does the SEO part come along? It does, but first we need to connect with why we want to create this training. Because, or whatever content you're creating. Because the reality is everything we create online is for other humans. So if we're not connecting with our intention and our humanity, it's not gonna connect with other people. So it's important to really think about that and spend some time with that. So I'm gonna write some intentions. Go ahead and do yours too. Okay. So I did a mind map and just getting out all the ideas. And now we're gonna move on to some tarot cards. So the idea of the tarot cards isn't to give you new ideas necessarily. It's to connect with the intention behind what you're creating. And you can do this with oracle cards, you can do this with any sort of cards. I'm using the Marseille deck, but it can be any sort of tarot deck. And if you're not into tarot decks, that's totally cool too. I just think it's a really fun thing to add to the process, and it can kind of open your mind to just a different approach. And many times I've been creating something and then I'll have some cards that kind of get me thinking about a different approach and a different idea. So try it out. So I usually pull 3 cards, but you can pull 1 card, and then I just look up the meaning of each one, and then I brainstorm each of these and kind of just let myself get into what I feel this means to me. So if something doesn't resonate with me, I just let it go. It's not a big deal. This is just to enhance the creative process and get me thinking outside the box. So now I have an initial intention set out. I've connected with my why behind this piece of content, and I've also used some tarot cards to think about some new ideas. And it's so interesting, whenever I do pull tarot cards for content, I find that in some way it really relates to what I'm getting across, or it relates to something that's going on for me right now, and it also gives me an opportunity to take the time to clear that or just to recognize it, and if needed, just resolve it so that I can go ahead and actually focus on the task at hand. So now the next step is I'm gonna write out the first batch of content that I want to create for this piece of content. I'm probably gonna do this on my computer. If I wanna go back to my notebook, I will, but this is just kind of like what I want to start with. So if you're writing a blog post, this might be the first paragraph. If you're doing some sort of video or a podcast, this might be just the introduction to the topic. And for my training, this is going to be the first couple of minutes that I'm going to be talking about why I'm doing this training and what people will be learning. So let's get to some writing. Okay, so I've written my first paragraph of information that I'm going to share on my training, and I'm feeling really good about it. But I do want to say, if you feel stuck in this step, just go back to your notebook and go back to why you want to create this. What is the purpose? Maybe, you know, if you have your cards out, look at them and just let yourself just write whatever. Don't worry right now about how this is going to be SEO friendly or how people are going to interpret it. Just get out your first ideas, and this kind of liberates more creativity. Maybe some of you have had the opposite happen. Now you just can't get enough and you want to write, and that's great. You can do that as well. The reason I recommend actually just writing the first part is that it feels much more manageable writing a paragraph instead of sitting down and having to write a full blog post or a full training. And this is something I see my clients really struggle with. They put so much pressure on themselves to like write the full thing in one sitting. And that might happen, but it really depends on what kind of day you're having. So this step is, to me, is just writing the intro, and then you can feel into if you want to keep writing or if you prefer to move on to the next step, which is we're going to be making an outline. So an outline can help you create structure, and specifically when we're thinking about SEO, when people open our websites and consume content, whether it's on our website or not, they want to understand how you're organizing the content. So what I like to do is, again, I go back to my notebook and I write out on one page how I want the structure of the content to go. So in the case of my training, I'm pretty clear on, like, I want to have an introduction, then I'm going to have some steps because I'm teaching something, and then I'm going to have a conclusion. Maybe if you're writing a blog post, depending on what blog post it's like, it might be, again, a step-by-step process. It might be a list of tips. It might be different sort of content structure. But deciding this now is going to help you also motivate you to write more and to create more, because suddenly you're writing inside of a container that feels safe and feels contained. So why don't you go ahead and create that structure, and we're gonna be moving on to the next step after that. Something else you might wanna do as you're building out this structure is getting a little bit of audience information or some research around what people are asking specifically when it comes to this topic. So the reason it might be good to do this now is that you can integrate these questions into the content now instead of later. Some of you might actually decide to choose the topic from the beginning based on what someone is searching, but I really believe that if you feel called to write this, you know that someone out there needs it, right? So what you can do now with some actual data, if you survey your audience or you do some keyword research, you can then make sure you're pinpointing and making sure that the outline is really specific to that data while still integrating your own intuition, your own creativity around wanting to write about that. So this is a good time to do that, or you can also do it closer to the end after you've written the whole thing. That's fine as well. So let's write some content outlines. Okay, so here I have my outline, which I've actually transferred to the computer, and you can see that I've already started to fill in the sections for each of these sections. So here you can actually go back to what you've been writing, what you started writing, and start to copy and paste for each of these sections what you want to happen. You can also add in your keywords that you want to target, start to think about linking, and even start to look at images. So the idea of the outline and starting to fill it in, it's gonna give you the big picture of your content, and it actually makes it a little easier to look at like what you want to happen. So you can write a part of it now, maybe you decide to step away and actually complete other parts. So you break it out and it just doesn't become this huge like block of text that needs to happen. In my case, because I'm building a video training, I just have bullet points of things that I want to mention foundation of important things that I want to say, and then I'm going to be using this as a script during the actual training. So if this is a blog post for you, you can definitely start looking at the formatting that you want to happen, the images that you want to add. Just take the time in your Google Doc to really splay out like what you want this to look like, because then this is really easy to pass on to someone else or to do it yourself at a later time instead of waiting last minute. You know, when you upload it, you're like, oh, I don't feel like styling this up. Looking at formatting for blog posts is so important. It changes the whole experience of the blog post. So taking a little time now to look to find that is a really important next step once all the content is out, or you can do it on the fly. So you might have guessed it, but the last step is actually publishing this and putting it live. So again, I'm doing a training, so it's a little different, but I will be publishing the training and then using this to maybe later create a blog post, or I have some text, right, that I can now use as part of the video. So once you upload everything, you're gonna make sure it looks good. Make sure to just check in with your Google Analytics data as soon as you publish, because it's a great thing to look at a couple days in if it's getting any traction. And I also think another great final tip is to share this very actively. I know it sounds obvious, like we publish something, we should share it. You've probably heard it many times, but many people just publish something and then they get stuck and they don't want to share it, or they kind of want to sabotage it all. So make sure you share it in every little place. Share it with clients, share it at the bottom of your email, anywhere that you can get it out in the world. It's gonna help Google see it faster, and Google likes to pick up on new trending things. So definitely share it, do a good push, and then think about how you can continuously share it. So this is another tip and an idea to think about. Where on your site, obviously it's gonna be on the blog section, it's gonna be on your website, but where could you include a link to it on your site? Maybe you could link to it from other blog posts, or maybe you can just have it be part of your client process that you share continuously inside of a client funnel. Maybe you have a welcome email funnel and you can include this blog post right in there. So looking at sustainable ways that your blog post is getting traffic, especially at the beginning when you're working on your traffic pretty actively, this is so crucial, and I highly recommend looking at how can you share this consistently, because one of the biggest things I see is people creating amazing content, but they're not sharing it, actively. If you have social media platforms, is there a way that you can assure that you're publishing it pretty actively? Because people don't, new people to your audience don't know that this blog post has been created. So it's your job to share it ongoing. And that's my final tip. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more SEO tips and more content tips, head on over to digitalbloomiq.com, and there I have a bunch of blog posts and resources for you to get more inspiration and more guidance around your SEO and your website.